I'm actually demoing one of my little projects called Scaled Up. You'll notice a little set of instructions on the top right corner of my slides there. I've got them wrong. Okay, do not connect to the venue Wi-Fi for them. There's a Wi-Fi network called Scaled Up. Get onto that one. The address at the end of it is correct. If you could all grab your laptops, tablets, smartphones, and get onto that, it will make a whole lot of sense when I get to that part of my presentation. Okay. My name's Andrew Faraday. I am not here as an entrepreneur, visionary. I'm not here to give you the next, phase of music technology. I am a coder. I deal with computers in my spare time. I just apply those skills into making music. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of little thoughts as to why and basically what that's all about. So, firstly, music and technology's always gone together. Now, we think of music technology as being synthesizers, sequencers, recording techniques, ways of making music, making sound, and modifying sound that have only been around about 100 years. But if you look at a piano, there's quite a complicated mechanism involved in hitting a string and then letting it ring. The actual framework needs to withstand about 20 tons of pressure. And there's technology involved in doing that. And before we really had the technology, people just used whatever they had, whatever they could get their hands on. People would sing, people would, use resonant parts of their body, just hit things that make sounds. Beatboxing, of course, much older than most people like to think. And basically, this is something we feel compelled as human beings to do, to use the stuff we've got to make music. And when there's a change in what we've got, music changes. But it doesn't just go for things, it also goes for ideas. So let's start with an idea used to make music, okay? Music is structured data. I think in computer terms, just trust me, it is. It follows a set of rules as to what's acceptable that's been developed over the last, several centuries. And in computer terms, it's represented by numbers. Text is structured data. It follows a set of rules developed over a number of centuries. And in computer terms, it's represented by numbers. So computers have a way of recognizing both of these types of things. So if I give it a set of rules, I can tell it to change one into the other, which I did. It's one of my sort of earliest bits of coding work. It's a text-to-music algorithm. And last year at Music Tech Fest, I demoed that with input from Twitter. So I actually had a performance where people were tweeting in, and that was part of what I was making. Incidentally, I prefer that photo of that event a lot more. But basically how that worked, started with Twitter. Guessing I don't need to explain that to you in any detail. And Twitter has something called an API that's a bit of software that lets me, as a programmer, write software that uses it instead of me using it through a browser, which is what I did. I wrote a script to get that, fed it through my text-to-music algorithm, and I got a bunch of numbers sent out, equally spaced in sort of musical time, and that doesn't make any sound. So I had to enlist Pure Data, a graphic programming language, which basically took in those numbers and synthesizes some sounds out of it. And for all that, I've got that thing at the end that just takes in numbers and will synthesize sound. Let's look at another idea. I didn't have to start that with Twitter. I could have used any input to make all of that system happen. I didn't really need the middle bit where it converts text to music. I can do just numbers and make numbers into music. I'm using a network protocol to connect it internally from Ruby, the programming language, to Pure Data. So it doesn't have to be generated on the same computer that's making the sound. And this gave rise about November last year to another idea. Isn't it high time somebody made all the laptops in my office spontaneously start singing Christmas carols in harmony during my Monday morning meeting? And I did that. It actually got me interviewed on BBC Outriders at 3 in the morning on Christmas Eve on digital radio. It's the pinnacle of my career, that one. I presented it, I skipped a bit there. Yeah, but I mentioned music's structured data, so I just needed to write that down in order to make these computers follow instructions and make sound together. I had to write it in a computer-readable way, and I wound up with this, which is a spreadsheet. You may not be able to see in much detail, but there's notes on the left-hand side, basically a note name and an octave, which is quite human-readable, and how long it's going to play. A set of control signals. You'll notice to the right there is a set of drums, drum events, but they're on different columns. And there was actually, because I could make multiple laptops make the sound, there was actually a surround sound drum kit as part of that as well, which is quite nice, it's a bit unusual. So all that happened there, I had my file, and I've got a thing that gets numbers. And I wrote a bit of software in the middle to take the one into the other. And downstairs, there's about 30, 40 people doing just that, using things with known purposes, coercing them to do slightly different stuff. And that's basically what's going on in the hackathon downstairs. Right. That was me presenting it earlier this year at the Music Tech Meetup. Incidentally, if you're in London, I'd recommend it. And you can basically see 4 laptops that are actually making the sound, acting as their own sound system. That mic was turned off, by the way. And a set of messages going along behind me. Okay, last idea, the one that led to Scaled Up. I'm a web developer, okay? I make web apps, I make software that people use via browsers, which they interact with. It takes data from them and works with that. People use whatever's to hand, their technology and their skills, to make music. And I can pass numbers into pure data and actually make music at the end of it. So that's the kind of block diagram of just that. There's a website, you put stuff into a server, keeps hold of it in a database, and something else reads that and makes numbers. And that's actually a bit rubbish. That's just a delayed action keyboard synth. But of course, the magic of the web is that it doesn't have to be just one person using it at any one time. I can make a room full of people play on the same synthesizer. Now, has anybody managed to connect to this? Ooh, 1 or 2. I'm just going to skip over to my browser and open up an option. And what you'll probably notice is that there's a keyboard on your screen. And some of you are ahead of me. And this is designed with a little bit of a kind of delay in there, so that it's not just an instrument that can be played by a room full of people, but it's an instrument that has to be played by a room full of people. You've got to interact in order to do it. Of course, it doesn't have to just be the one instrument. I'm going to give you a few more options, and I recommend you just tap and play with those a bit. I was hoping we could get more people in. Of course, the technology doesn't always allow it. Ooh, that kick sounds quite nice, actually. And of course, this is music being spontaneously and collaboratively created by the people here. And it'll be completely different whenever it's done. There is actually an event queue going on in the background as well, so people send in notes at the same time. They'll wind up one after another, so it kind of coerces it into a musical time. I'm going to limit you down to a drum kit for just now. You can kind of hear that. It's forcing a metronome on it. Excellent. Sort of middle 8 there, and go for a big finish. Put as much as you can into it. All 4 of you. Great, I'm going to just take those away, and you should see a message telling you the fun's over, basically. And of course, I'm not sure what's happening there. Of course, whenever we do anything online, you leave an online footprint. I'm sure we're all very aware of that, so let's have a look at yours. You made 150 notes, you tended towards a C, boring lot. Mostly used the blip. Let's see, you're fond of the hi-hat and the snare. We can also see exactly, because of course they asked for your name in it, who was involved. It says we've got 17 of you. Who's Will? Yeah, you won. Nicely done. You could do it on separate browsers and things, actually, so you can kind of cheat with that one. But I can tell you exactly what Will was getting up to, which is the dark side of sort of the digital footprint you leave online. But, you know, it's a nice demonstration. What I will say is that's not just a live instrument. It's a collaborative, basically composition tool. So if you want to hear a bit of a cacophony, what I'm going to do is just leave you on all the notes you've just made, put together as one continuous event. So this is going to sound horrible. That was the concerto for many composers and one laptop performed at Music Tech Fest 2014. Thank you very much for listening, for putting up with me, and for participating. Thank you.
Andrew Faraday, thank you so much. And round of applause for the composers, please.